Perry accuser Derek Dixon sits down in a TV interview for the first time, sharing allegations of workplace assault and harassment.
That's when he pushed me up against the wall and grabbed my ass again.
Tyler Perry's legal team just dropped a bombshell, calling Derek Dixon's $260 million intimate harassment lawsuit a false and cynical shakedown, while Dixon's attorney fired back with a chilling warning that others will be sharing stories about Mr. Perry. This isn't just a lawsuit anymore, it's a full-blown legal war, and the stakes couldn't be higher. On October 1st, Perry's lawyers filed their response in court, describing Dixon's accusations as a fabrication built on greed, desperation, and what they called Hollywood cliches. They say this isn't about justice or misconduct, it's about a disgruntled actor trying to turn a failed career opportunity into a lottery ticket. But the language in those court papers wasn't just offensive, it was scorched earth. Perry called the lawsuit profoundly disappointing, cynical, and most of all, false. He accused Dixon of exploiting what he described as a platonic friendship and professional mentorship, twisting ordinary interactions into something sinister.
Looking for money to buy your silence?
No, I think I was looking for accountability on to what he did. I think what he did was wrong, and it needed to be something that would deter him from doing this to somebody else.
Perry's filing paints a picture of a man who, in their words, invented alleged assaults and encounters that never happened. They insist there were no inappropriate messages, no offers of money or roles in exchange for anything personal, and according to them, whatever Dixon earned on set, whether it was his role as Dale in The Oval or the attention his pilot script received, came from merit alone. It's a familiar defense in celebrity scandals: deny everything, hit back hard, and suggest that the accuser has ulterior motives. But in this case, Dixon and his attorney Jonathan Delshad have been relentless, producing what they claim are text messages from Perry himself. Messages that, if verified, could demolish the billionaire's defense and expose a disturbing power dynamic behind the scenes of one of television's most successful productions.
Tell us about the first time you ever met Tyler Perry.
Yeah, I met him at his studio opening party in 2019. I was working for an events company, and we met, and he said to me, are you an actor? And I said, well, not right now. I'm working on it, but not right now. And he said, yeah, you are. We need to talk. You should get my number and
Dixon, who appeared in 85 episodes of The Oval between 2021 and 2025, says Perry created what he calls a coercive and intimate exploitative environment. The story begins in 2019 at the opening of Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta, when the two men first met. Dixon was working the event when Perry allegedly asked if he was an actor, gave him his number, and told him to keep in touch. From there, according to the lawsuit, a series of messages and invitations followed. Dixon says Perry first offered him a small role in Ruthless, then a bigger one in The Oval, where Perry promised to expand his part if he delivered a strong performance. But as Dixon tells it, the friendship quickly crossed a line. He claims Perry began sending late-night texts, some explicitly suggestive, others referencing their private conversations and joking about physical attraction. Dixon says he brushed off the remarks, hoping the behavior would fade, but instead it escalated. In January 2020, he says Perry invited him to his home in Georgia to talk about career plans. After both had been drinking, Dixon stayed overnight in the guest house. That's when he alleges Perry entered the room, climbed into bed, and began touching his leg. Dixon says he jumped up, made it clear he wasn't interested, and thought that would be the end of it. But in the months that followed, Perry's texts allegedly intensified. "What's it going to take for you to have guiltless intimacy?" one of the messages read, according to Dixon's court filing. The implication, he says, was that professional rewards and personal compliance were quietly connected.
And I said, stop, I don't want to be naked, I don't want this. And he was just like, no, I'm not gonna hurt you, and just continued. And in that moment, unless someone's been through something where they have their control over their bodies taken away, you don't really understand the kind of feelings that you get in that moment. It was almost like every thought came through my head to run, to fight.
The second major incident, according to the complaint, happened on set during the second season of The Oval. Dixon says Perry invited him into his trailer for a drink after filming, asked if he was attracted to him, and when Dixon tried to defuse the conversation, Perry allegedly pushed him against the wall and grabbed him. "I left feeling sick," Dixon told a friend that same night, according to statements later included in the legal filing. The details sound cinematic, but the pain underneath it feels real. Then came the third and most disturbing allegation. In June 2021, Dixon says Perry pulled down his underwear during what began as a conversation about a new pilot project and told him to relax and let it happen. Dixon claims he managed to defuse the situation by pretending he was hungry until Perry left to get food. He locked himself in the bathroom and stayed there until morning.
The day after that, he called several times, and I ended up getting afraid of what was going on the other side. So I picked up, and that's when he said, you know, he was sorry for what happened. He doesn't know why he did that, and that maybe he was self-sabotaging or something. And in the same call, he said, and don't worry, we're going to do your show.
And Dixon broke his silence in June 2024 by filing a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. He also resigned from the Oval. That decision cost him roughly $400,000 in lost income. A few months later, he filed the civil suit in Los Angeles Superior Court, demanding $260 million in damages. According to Dixon, half of that figure represents lost wages and the pilot that never materialized. The other half is meant to act as a deterrent. His way of asking, how do you stop a billionaire who won't stop themselves? That line, delivered during his ABC News interview, has since echoed across entertainment media like a moral challenge aimed squarely at Perry's empire. Jonathan Delshad, Dixon's attorney, has taken a confrontational stance from the start. We're certain we'll prove harassment, assault, and battery absolutely happened, he told reporters outside the courthouse. He also warned that more individuals may come forward, saying he was convinced Dixon was not the only one. Insiders close to the production tell us there's quiet anxiety at Tyler Perry Studios, where longtime collaborators are now keeping their distance from the mogul, waiting to see how far this legal storm spreads. It's the kind of whisper network Hollywood knows well. Half fear, half fascination. Everyone is wondering if this is an isolated feud or the start of something larger.
That was his way of showing his power over us and our careers, and that he doesn't have a problem with just one of us off.
Perry's response, meanwhile, has been nothing short of a counterattack. In addition to denying the allegations, his legal team moved to dismiss the entire case, arguing that it was filed in the wrong state. California, they say, has no jurisdiction because everything in question happened in Georgia, where Perry lives, where his studio operates, and where the Oval is filmed. They accused Dixon of what lawyers call forum shopping, picking California only because its juries tend to favor plaintiffs in harassment cases. The court filing goes even further, accusing Dixon of manipulating timelines and manufacturing outrage to gain leverage in the press. Perry's lawyers say the lawsuit's language belongs in Hollywood, not in a courtroom, calling it theatrically pled. We can see what they're doing. They're not just defending Perry, they're flipping the narrative. They want to portray Dixon as an opportunist who stayed silent for years while enjoying the benefits of working with a billionaire, only to strike when a creative project didn't pan out. In their telling, this entire case began not with misconduct, but with disappointment over a pilot Perry allegedly chose not to sell to Netflix. They say the rejection is what triggered Dixon's accusations, not any actual harassment, and they make sure to remind the court and the public that Dixon had no issue continuing to act on the Oval even after the incidents he now describes as traumatic.
What kind of a toll would you say that this has all taken on you?
I was extremely anxious. The calls got to a point where the calls and texts were almost every day. Just this constant state of like, if I don't answer, I will lose my job.
That argument, though, cuts both ways. Victim advocates have already pointed out that continued contact doesn't disprove coercion, especially when one person holds control over another's livelihood. The power imbalance between an actor and a billionaire producer is impossible to ignore. And that's exactly where this case becomes bigger than its individual details. Because if Dixon's allegations are true, they fit into a broader conversation that Hollywood has been avoiding for years. What happens when the alleged abuser isn't just a filmmaker, but the boss of an entire creative ecosystem? Perry's productions employ hundreds across film, television, and theater. His Atlanta studio is the largest in the country, bigger than many of the traditional Hollywood lots combined.
To a point in the night where, we were both kind of feeling drunk, and I remember we were walking back to the guest area where I've stayed before, and there was this health monitor scale on the way. And I was like, what is that? And he said, well, you have to be in your underwear to measure, whatever, so you should do it. He reached down and pulled my underwear down and grabbed my
We've learned that since the lawsuit surfaced, other former cast members have been contacted by reporters and investigators asking whether they ever experienced similar treatment. No one has gone on record, but there's unease in the air. One insider described it as waiting for the dam to crack. Meanwhile, Perry's PR team has gone into overdrive, issuing statements that frame Dixon as a troubled man seeking help in the wrong place. In one filing, they even wrote, by his actions and false accusations, it is clear that Mr. Dixon needs help. That line alone has drawn outrage online, with critics accusing Perry of gaslighting his accuser instead of addressing the claims directly. The media machine surrounding this lawsuit is operating on two speeds. One side pushing evidence, the other discrediting it. ABC, Variety, and The Hollywood Reporter have all obtained portions of the alleged text exchanges exchanges. While none have independently verified them, the content is difficult to ignore. "Don't you dare ignore me. I deserve attention all the time," one message allegedly read. Another commented on Dixon's body after a choking scene on set. Perry's lawyers have not explicitly denied writing those texts. They've simply called the messages taken out of context. That omission, no clear statement that the messages are fake, has become a point of fascination for legal analysts following the case.
These are claims that Tyler Perry denies, but Dixon says he's speaking out now to try to stop a billionaire who won't stop themselves.
As Perry's legal strategy unfolds, it's clear they're trying to make the story about geography and greed rather than behavior. They argue that the contract Dixon signed required any disputes to be handled under Georgia law, in Fulton County specifically. That clause, they say, should nullify his California filing. But Delshad's team insists those contracts can't shield Perry from accountability, especially for alleged conduct that falls outside of professional agreement. In their words, no employer has the right to manipulate or threaten an employee's livelihood based on intimate expectations. And because Perry holds multiple titles, creator, producer, director, the question of where the employer-employee line begins and ends becomes a legal maze. Behind the scenes, there's talk that Perry's camp tried to settle before the case went public. A few sources familiar with the early negotiations say the discussions collapsed after what one called a wild difference in numbers. If true, that would explain why Perry's filing includes a curious note claiming they made good faith efforts to resolve the dispute privately, but failed. Typically, that kind of language doesn't appear in formal court documents. It reads more like an appeal to public opinion, proof that Perry was willing to talk and Dixon wasn't. Meanwhile, public sentiment is fracturing. For years, Perry has been celebrated as a Hollywood trailblazer, the self-made mogul who built a studio on what used to be a Confederate Army base. But now that empire faces scrutiny not for its achievements, but for how it allegedly treated those inside its gates. Industry observers have begun drawing comparisons to earlier scandals that began quietly, then erupted when multiple accusers came forward. The whisperers around Perry echo those early patterns, stories that sound too specific to ignore, but too explosive to verify. And then there's the ripple effect. In May, actor Alfonso Ribeiro, who once directed episodes for A Perry Show, publicly stated he would never work with the mogul again. He didn't elaborate, just said he wanted nothing from that man. The timing was odd, weeks before Dixon's lawsuit hit the headlines, but now people are re-examining that post in a different light. Add to that the rumor of an unauthorized documentary in production called Surviving Tyler Perry, said to feature interviews with alleged victims, and suddenly, this isn't one man's accusation anymore, it's the start of a reputational avalanche. Perry's lawyers are already threatening to sue anyone connected to the film, calling it defamatory.
We were over at his house. We're having some drinks in his guest house, and it was late at night, and he has a guest quarters, and said that you can sleep there instead of not driving. And his house is far from Atlanta and where I was living. And I got into bed, and then I noticed that he climbed into bed with me as well, and started rubbing my leg. And I jumped up out of bed.
We can see how all of this creates a high-stakes chess match. On one side, a billionaire defending not just his name, but an entire brand built on moral storytelling and faith-driven themes. On the other, a former employee armed with receipts that, if authenticated, could make Hollywood history. What makes this case so combustible is that both narratives feel possible. Perry's defenders point to decades of philanthropic work, his humanitarian awards, and the hundreds of people he's helped launch into careers. Dixon's supporters point to the messages, the alleged pattern, and the fear of retaliation that kept him silent. Both stories can't be true, but in the court of public opinion, they're already colliding. And now, as we approach the next phase, when the court decides whether the case stays in California or moves to Georgia, the atmosphere around Perry is shifting. Insiders at streaming platforms that have multi-picture deals with him are quietly reviewing their options, waiting to see if this lawsuit becomes too radioactive to ignore. One executive described the mood as nervous but pragmatic, saying the industry is watching for any sign that more complaints could surface. If that happens, the fallout could dwarf even the $260 million at stake in this case. For now, both camps are digging in. Perry's team insists they will refute every accusation line by line in court. Dixon's attorney says he's preparing new evidence, including corroborating witness statements and potential forensic verification of the messages. The next court hearing is expected to determine whether the lawsuit proceeds or gets transferred. And somewhere behind those legal motions, there's still that haunting question from Dixon's interview, a question that hangs in the air with no answer yet. How do you stop a billionaire who won't stop themselves? Because if those texts are real and if others do come forward, this might not just be about one actor and one director. It might be the opening scene of something much bigger, something that could reshape how Hollywood handles its most untouchable power players. And that's exactly where the story starts to turn, as more eyes begin looking toward Atlanta, where rumors suggest that what's already been made public might only be a fraction of what's waiting to surface.
What made you decide to come forward with your story?
I wanted to speak out and not stay silent about it anymore.
Meanwhile, Dixon's camp is moving forward like they expect more revelations. We've heard whispers, unconfirmed but persistent, that one or two former staffers from Perry's Atlanta studio have been contacted by investigators about unrelated misconduct claims. Whether those witnesses ever step into the spotlight remains to be seen, but the possibility alone has transformed this lawsuit from a personal dispute into a potential industry reckoning. It's a high-stakes gamble for everyone involved. If Dixon wins, it's not just about the $260 million. It's about whether a billionaire like Tyler Perry can ever truly be held accountable, or whether his power will allow him to walk away untouched, leaving only rumors and NDAs in his wake. What we're witnessing is a clash between image and evidence. On one side stands Perry, with decades of cultural goodwill and an empire built on stories of faith, forgiveness, and family. On the other, a working actor who says that behind the inspirational persona was a system of control no one dared challenge. And between them is a courtroom that will decide which version of Tyler Perry becomes the official one, the savior or the manipulator. Either outcome will echo far beyond this case. For Hollywood's power players, this trial is a warning shot that the old rules of silence might finally be breaking down. And one thing's for sure, if Derek Dixon's allegations are proven true, this lawsuit won't just be a scandal, it'll be the moment Tyler Perry's empire begins to crack. The instant the walls of invincibility start to tremble. But what if the opposite happens? What if Perry walks away victorious, stronger than ever, and Dixon fades into obscurity? Which version of the truth will history remember? Let us know what you think, because this story is far from over. Until next time, stay curious, stay sharp, and don't look away too soon.